Hey everybody, this is Final Flame Productions. Welcome back to another Last of Us video. Today we talk more about the fallout of the release of The Last of Us 2. Today I want to focus on IGN. IGN has been a website I've subscribed to and followed for a long time. I'm sure many people would laugh at that and say, are you only noticing now that they're completely untrustworthy? Not really. I mean, I've liked some of the hosts they have, the people that are a part of IGN's videos on YouTube. Some of them are fairly likable and some of them aren't at all. I don't want to name any names at all in this because I don't like the idea of showing pictures or naming people or drawing attention to people, but I do find the entity that is IGN quite problematic, and I think that's worth challenging in a respectful and sort of adult way. There's other videos on YouTube that'll attack them, attack the people themselves, and I don't think that's helpful. IGN's an interesting one. I mean, people will say there's loads more, and there is loads more. There's so many gaming sites that haven't covered themselves in any glory throughout this Last of Us 2 debacle. I mean, you just recently there have somebody said, I think from Polygon, when they reviewed the game, they got a email or something from a Naughty Dog employee sort of questioning why they were negative about the game. And stuff like that is quite creepy. It's subtle, but it's not quite subtle enough for me to look at and think, oh, that's normal. I think that the relationship between gaming websites like IGN, GameSpot, Polygon, whatever, and the likes of Neil Druckmann and people from Naughty Dog or people from Sony or whatever game studio there is, I find some of it to be quite problematic. Problematic in the sense that you're supposed to trust these websites for being non-biased, for critically covering games in an honest fashion, or at least that's what I would suspect websites like this should be like. As I said in another video, I really like Mark Kermode. He's an English movie reviewer. I don't quite like all his opinions. I don't find his outlook on certain stuff, politics, whatever it is, to be in fitting with what I believe in, or I find him a little bit overbearing in that sense. But his way of reviewing his way of reviewing movies is very honest. It's very passionate. It's non-biased. IGN, on the other hand, is a little bit more questionable. The Last of Us 2, if you've been following it, the reviews that came out, they were extremely positive, especially from IGN, calling it a masterpiece, 10 out of 10. I believe they used the word masterpiece. And of course, for a game like The Last of Us 2, a few years ago, if someone said The Last of Us 2 would get 10 out of 10 masterpiece reviews, you'd probably go, that's pretty believable. But because of the leaks, people knew what the plot was going to be, people knew how things were going to turn out, and the idea that this could be a masterpiece was quite staggering. And then IGN and their employees all kind of came out in unison, one way or another, praising the game, tweeting people from Naughty Dog, being really pally and friendly and smoking, joking and laughing, making videos with them, interviewing them, sucking up, being overly complimentary, not challenging any of the things that fans of the game franchise The Last of Us would like them to be challenged on. All of this stuff doesn't really sit well with me. I'm someone that rarely gets into politics in this channel, but in politics in general, I don't give any credence to any website or any news channel that is biased one way or another. If you can't talk about news stories, if you can't cover stories and situations in an unbiased way, or at least attempt to be unbiased, I don't find you believable. I don't find you trustworthy. I mean, there's certain news sites that cover certain presidents, and they're either overtly negative or overtly positive in a completely biased way. That stuff for me is just a complete turn-off, because if the people can't look at the news in a non-biased way and cover it without interjecting their opinions, without ignoring news stories that doesn't fit with their agenda, all of that stuff to me, it just doesn't sit well. when it comes to IGN, The Last of Us, when it comes to GameSpot, when it comes to all these websites, they didn't cover any of the negative news stories around The Last of Us 2. Last of Us 2 had an extremely controversial situation where they were copyright striking people that were not using any copyright material, but they were still striking down channels with 2 and 3 strikes, and if you get 3 strikes on YouTube, you're gone. No games website, none of the big ones anyway that I've been talking about, like IGN, covered those stories. The people, the journalists and the people who work for IGN, when quizzed about it on Twitter, didn't want to know about it. Wasn't really something they felt obliged or interested having any conversation about. If that was a story, if that was any other sort of media, I think it would be talked about. At least I would hope it'd be talked about. But these games journalists didn't want to rock the boat with IGN, didn't want to ruffle feathers that they challenging Naughty Dog wasn't a good way to go about it. Why that is, I don't know. I struggle to I have a lot of ideas why that would be, but people go as far as to say that they're being paid off. I don't think it's quite that. I think it's a case that they want to keep in with them. They want to be on the good side. They want to compliment and rub their backs and get all of the great stuff that comes from being on the right side of big game studios like Naughty Dog and Sony itself. But that just means that you can't trust these sites. I've been subscribed to IGN for a long time. I unsubscribed in the past while because all of this, just to me, it's indicative of what's wrong with journalism. If the people covering the stories are just completely biased and untrustworthy, why would you bother looking at their stuff? Why would you bother taking them seriously in their reviews? You simply can't. For IGN's employees to all come out in unison, all praising the game, all backing each other up, for higher ups in IGN to mock fans that dislike the game, all this stuff just blends in to make it would make you wonder why people are surprised that fans are so angry and so passionate about why they dislike this game. And we've seen it in the media, we've seen it from the likes of Neil Druckmann, that if you just kind of mock the fans, if you label them one way or another, that's a good way of shutting these fans up, is just being toxic or whatever you want to describe them as. The whole thing is a mess. That there's so much to talk about in terms of this game and all the things that come out. If you've got Neil Druckmann admitting that he was the one who started striking down videos, you've got him admitting that he falsely advertised the game to put fans off the scent of what the game was really going to be. All this stuff is just staggering, and you could talk about it for hours and hours. But again, the whole game release of The Last of Us 2 has been a disaster. It's been a mess. They made a lot of money, which probably means that they think that they've done right. They think that it's been a success. Financially, it has been. But in the future, will people ever really trust IGN or a place like that anymore? Will people ever trust Naughty Dog to release a game that isn't a complete FU to fans? I don't think so. I surely won't forget these things. What do you think? Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm overblowing it? Who knows? Let me know.
Help me stop him.